And I hit record, so we're good. We're going.
You're in charge. Nice.
There it is. Well, welcome everybody to the Grading Wars.
Yes. I like the topic name.
Yeah, subtitle was, do you ever feel like it's a never-ending battle to grade it all? Raise your hand if you ever feel, or raise your glass if you ever feel like it's a never-ending.
All right, Danielle, you got your red cup.
Nice. Very nice. So I was thinking that we could just start this way. I got a couple questions that I've just started out with, and anybody during this whole time, put your questions over in the side, and we can get to your questions about grading. But just to start it out, how many days a week do you take papers home to grade? Feel free to type those in there. And maybe make it a month, too. We could look at a week and then a month.
I like the 0 answer for sure.
0 is good. She busted that out quick.
That's what I strive for the same. I always strive for 0 days.
I don't know why I just typed my answer. Like, I can talk.
You can type it, too.
It's the introvert in me. I'm going to type my answer. I am finally at 0. But once you add the month caveat, maybe once per month. But I really try not to let that happen.
Yeah, that's. I feel like once you can kind of get in that zone of that's your philosophy and you can roll with it, you find ways to make it work for yourself really well. I've known a lot of teachers that have been able to do that.
I completely agree. I feel like once you, and it's almost the opposite is true too. Once you take a couple of things home, other things start sneaking in. So I really try to just put it on my desk, as hard as that is. It's really hard.
So what are some of the strategies and tricks that you guys have used to do that, to limit the take-home grading?
Yeah. Can I ask an intro question before that even?
Yeah, of course.
Like, what kinds of papers does everybody take home? Or when you used to take papers home, which kinds of papers were the ones you felt like you had to take home or they wouldn't get done?
For me, it was when I was doing notebook checks of students, because I found that a great way to avoid oftentimes bringing work home and grading a lot was to have students put work directly in their notebooks, which saves you a lot of time because you're not grading them constantly. But then when you are checking them, it's a lot. So when I first started doing that, I would be like living the dream for a few weeks, like, oh, this is great. I'm not grading anything. I'm not bringing anything home. And then the notebooks start stacking so high, like, holy cow, what did I get myself into? And that was overwhelming at first. And I figured that out since then. But that was what I was taking home.
Wait, can I clap? Oh, I can clap on your, that's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Use a little clap. So when you saw them start to get too high, then eventually you did take them home, but they were scary?
Well, I had to take them home because I was giving them pretty intense run-throughs because it was a lot of work that I had students put in there. So I needed like egg crates or cartons to egg crates full of notebooks, because I mean the first time I was doing it, I had 5 classes of like 30 kids each, and each kid's notebook was a legit size notebook. And I was like, I'm not doing this again, because
grade every page.
It was my whole backseat. Well, I would do them as units. So you're talking maybe like 25, 30 pages at a time. But I mean, yeah, that was my first time feeling really overwhelmed with grading. But thankfully, I've come a long way since then.
So to clarify, you've stopped doing notebooks?
I still do the notebooks, but I don't do the take home. I don't wait 2 weeks to check them and then take them all home with me to check them, because the house turns into a mess if I were to do that. Yeah.
And for me, I really isolated. My biggest problem was wanting to solve all of the problems in student work. So I would take home essays and I would spend 20 minutes. Okay, so you should know that my first teaching experience, I was a senior in high school and I had 6 freshmen and I taught them like the advanced pullout, right? I was their like enrichment. Okay. So luckily I learned this lesson really early because I took home their—
You're a go-getter.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I took home their essay, their first essay, and I spent like half an hour, maybe 45 minutes per kid, like highlighting. I think I had like blue for like grammar. I don't know what. And so I learned this lesson really early, that you can't attack all the problems. And it was a really good lesson to learn really early. Because that was the biggest thing that I was taking home, were these stacks of papers. And then, you know, all of a sudden my whole weekend is gone on one. And then the worst thing, Monday morning, they get them back. And what do? Oh, okay. Right?
Totally the worst.
The worst. It's like, oh, there's my weekend in the trash can over there.
I know.
We just blogged about that last week, actually, on that. The switch in my head when I saw that basically I was the one editing their papers. That very moment you just said, when they look at it and go, especially on the rough draft, they look at it and go, oh, okay. And then all they fix is the stuff I told them to fix. And then when they turn it in, it's basically, it's not even basically, it is their first draft with all of the fixes I wrote and no more at all.
And then you also wrote, or you said in your video, that they would make intentional errors on their first draft so that they would already know like what they were going to make better. Those kids.
Yep. Genius. Wow.
Yeah, that was definitely my honors kids. They were the ones that knew what errors to not fix the first time around, so they'd have work to fit. They didn't want to do the hard work; they just wanted to do the easy work. Yeah.
Okay, let's
constantly find ways to just impress you. Like I never would have thought of that. Never would have thought of that. Student or as a teacher.
So the papers that I always had the hardest time taking home were definitely essays. Those were the ones that I felt like I needed to grade at home, mainly because there's the first draft, and then like I didn't want weeks to go by between, and so I felt like I had to get the first draft done in like a week. Yeah, which was again all of me fixing all of their errors, and then they turned in the final draft a week later, which I had to grade all of those again, and so that was just I don't understand how it took me so long and so many pounds to figure out that problem, but it definitely did. I didn't really take anything else home. Maybe every once in a while, like a big packet, like you said, notebooks. I never did notebooks; they scared me, so I just didn't do them. But those were my nightmare. Those ones.
Yeah,
I think that it was very important. I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, and I'm sorry if I am, but I think it was important for me as a teacher to break free of what I thought teachers' lives look like and start creating like a manageable workload for myself. Like I don't have to spend all weekend grading.
Yeah, exactly. And once you kind of get yourself out of that mindset, then it's about finding the solutions to make that work best for you, and that kind of accurately reflect the student's learning as well.
Where do we get that mindset from? Like I've tried to think back where that mindset came from, that teachers have to take papers home or they're not doing a good job. You understand what I'm saying? Like I don't know where that question came from or that thought, but I've thought back, like it never happened in my credential programs or my master. Like no teacher ever really, well, I guess teachers did say it. I guess that's maybe where, but like nobody ever really said like, you're not doing your job as a teacher if you don't take papers home. But I think that was in my head, right?
I think that was kind of what we just grew up on, that image of teachers. That's that kind of still old teacher stereotype of being buried under papers and having a desk filled with papers and coming home and, breaking out the red pen and marking all over paper and then turning it back to the students. I feel like that was like the image in my head of what I probably had as teachers in high school. And kind of when you're starting your career, I think you bottle a lot off of your own experiences and the teachers that you had until you kind of find your niche. and what works best for you. And that's probably where a lot of that comes from, because that's still that old concept of what a teacher is for a lot of people.
And I think that it was also like the image of what the paper was supposed to look like after I had graded it. And it took me all weekend to get all the papers to look like that, right? With all the beautiful, like, whatevers.
Yeah. And I took me a while too to get out of correcting like every mistake I saw too. I mean, as English teachers, probably know a lot more about that than me, because sometimes as a history teacher, I'm like grading their grammar and stuff at first. It's like that was overwhelming for me. And I'm like, what am I doing here? This is not what I should be focusing on here. I should be focusing on their content learning.
Okay, so Chris,
I found too that.
I don't know. Am I
Go ahead.
supposed to look at questions, or are you managing that, Jonathan? But
You can. I found one, and I put it over on the side, on the left side. You should see questions, so we
Okay.
can get to that one in a minute.
Gotcha.
What was I just saying?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
So should we start looking at, like, I think what everybody wants to know is, like, what are the solutions that we found? What are some things that can really help, manage this and make it successful for us?
Yeah. Well, I said like the same. I think the first we've already said. I think a lot of the things in my head is putting the misunderstandings out on the table, right? I mean, Danielle, you said just don't do it. Just decide not to, right? And like refuse to really leave them on the desk in the classroom. And for me, that was my first step. Was I just had to decide a new paradigm and then figure it out afterwards. It's like I got to jump out of the plane. Nobody said I could actually survive, but I have to believe that I can. So I'm going to jump out and figure it out on the way, because otherwise I'll never jump out. Like I don't know if there's a like start from just a little bit and work your way up. But maybe.
I would say it's like running, right? They say that the hardest part about running is getting out the door. I would say that it's exactly the same thing for going home without papers. You just got to like get out that door. So one concrete thing that I do very intentionally, I do not write on student papers anymore.
Okay.
No. So I have a rubric. It is a half-page rubric, and each kid gets one at the beginning of the assignment, and each kid staples that to the front of their paper. We can maybe get into more what that looks like later, but all of my comments, and I actually only make 3, they go on the back of that rubric. There's like the half page. And I'm not going to get caught up in like, you need a subject in this sentence, unless that's my goal. If I'm teaching grammar, like, okay. But if I have them write an essay about night, I care about what they think about night, not, Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to write on the back of their rubric, and I'm going to write 3 sentences, 2 positives and a delta. To be improved. It's a triangle.
I like that.
For those of you not, it's a triangle. Yeah. Okay. And that goes in the middle, so it's a complement sandwich. So plus, delta, plus. 3 sentences.
That's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all you do.
Yep.
I like that. I mean, that makes it so much more manageable then, and especially putting the onus on the student to put that rubric on the front of their assignment each time too, taking ownership of their assessment as well.
And now I have them, this is recent, next year I'll do it the whole time, but now I have them mark in blue what they think they deserve in each criteria.
Yeah, love that.
That's awesome.
I've tried doing that before, and have you heard the kids are harsher on themselves than you would. They're always way harsher than I would be.
Yeah.
This paper deserves a 0.
Yeah. So I did, with the big essays, I did the same thing. I think my first step toward well, my very first step was I just decided not to bring them home. But then my first step toward like actually tackling them in the classroom, like during my off time, was rubrics. And those were golden. They saved so much time on, but then I still got a little frustrated. Like if I was spending 10 minutes per essay, right? That was a lot of time. And then if I cut that, I think the rubric probably cut it down to like 3 minutes or 4 minutes, maybe something like that. But that still felt like I have 250 students. So 4 minutes an essay was still 1,000 minutes or something, right? It was like still a crazy amount. And I just had to start, I just have my efficiency wheels working. And that's when I realized, like, wait a second. So I can still have the rubric. And so I would have them grade it with the rubric, but then I wouldn't use the rubric. Like I know the rubric. So I would do like 10 test essays at the beginning with the rubric every time. And I'd put those on the bottom. And then I would do the next essays without a rubric. I would just put a letter grade, like no comments at all the way down to the bottom. And then I would grade the last 10 again without seeing my rubric score, just like I did at the beginning. And then I would check to make sure that that I was accurate, right? Well, actually, the first time I didn't do it all the way at the bottom. I did it like 15 in so that I wouldn't know when I didn't want to do the whole thing and be off. But once I had my inner rubric on, then I did it that way. And almost every single time it was the same exact score. And so I just realized I don't need that. They're the ones that need it, not me. And once I realized that, then I could cut it down to, it was under a minute and a half, because I don't have to write anything. I'm just reading their ideas all the way through. And then I know, like, that's a B+, that's a C, that was a light changer.
I would just add here that, if you do decide to become this teacher that doesn't take work home, and I fully support you, and you grade really fast, students are going to notice you grade really fast. So it's going to be important that you remember what they wrote. Okay, so you think of whatever strategies you have for remembering, but I find that if I just, say to a couple students in each class, hey, I liked that point you made about blah, blah, blah. And hey, that was a really great introduction. Your hook was really engaging. Just make a couple comments, and that way, like, they know you're reading, right? Because you don't want them to think you're not reading. And you don't want the ones that maybe you weren't so interested in to test you. So you just got to like get ahead of that.
Yeah, because I mean, speaking of, the tricks kids will play, I've definitely had kids put things in homework or essays or something thinking that I wasn't going to read it or see it. And if some of those slip past you and you don't catch them, it spreads like wildfire around the kids, and then they'll try to see what they could put in there.
I was that student, just so you know. I put Mr. It was my math teacher. Mr. So-and-so, if you're reading this, please write this at the bottom of the paper. And he didn't put it on. I was like, and I showed him. I went up, hey, I know you didn't read this.
And your credibility is just shot, man. You can't let that slip by. So I have not noticed any of those, thankfully.
I did, and then I would tell them. Like, I would actually answer it down there, and then they wouldn't do it again because the gig was up.
Yeah, you catch that, but you got to catch those at the beginning so that they know. One of the things that kind of really helped me get into this was when we had like one of those teacher workshops on mastery learning, and a lot of it was very drab, but the wheels were spinning in my head a lot of the time, and I was kind of thinking about what homework is and what assignments are, and that great Allen Iverson clip popped into my head from YouTube where he's talking about practice, and he's like, we're talking about practice, and the idea that homework and formative assessments as you're going through a unit are practice to help kids get ready. And that thought of like, we're talking about practice, you're giving me, and like I thought of all the times like kids complained about grades over a homework assignment, or that they didn't turn them in, or disagreements I had. And that thought, like, why are we talking about practice? We're talking about practice here. Why are we talking about homework? I'm like, I got to get away from that. So I really stopped grading most of the homework in that sense. And I tried to go more towards that kind of college grading scale of just a 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And as often as I could, going through it and then giving, quick scores on these, or sometimes not giving it necessarily a grade at all, to kind of get away from that and building that into the students. And I actually show my students that clip at the beginning of the year when I'm going over kind of rules of the classroom and things like that, and talk to them about homework is practice. Like we're going through this to kind of get you through that. It's not something that we should be kind of focusing on the grade. It's a snapshot in time. This is how you are on this concept or on this part of the curriculum that we all need to know through this class. And if you're doing poorly, it's just a tiny little snapshot. That's okay. And that kind of really helped build my grading philosophy. And we had this, one of the things I actually did like that was we all developed a GPS, like a grading philosophy statement. And our grading philosophy statement, or GPS, is supposed to navigate how we use our grading. And that kind of concept, when I wrote it down and actually came up with, okay, this is my grading philosophy, and got that in my head, to like, that really does, in a way, help me navigate the school years since then in making grading really manageable.
I was just asking a question for everybody. Feel free to throw your comments over there.
All right.
So Luke, to just clarify, when did you actually put those grades on the assignments? Since you didn't take them home, when did you do the 4, 3, 2, 1?
So I would have warm-ups each day and exit tickets each day. And what I started doing was having students open their notebook. And I still stuck with, I like having interactive notebooks. I like having all of the stuff in there. So when kids are reviewing, or they're getting ready, or they're studying, everything is in that notebook. They're not searching for papers. But instead of grading it all at once, they would have some kind of interactive notebook assignment. It would be in their notebook, and usually they might start it in class and then finish it for homework. And then the next day, while they're doing their warm-up, they would take it out, leave it on their desk, and I could then go around and take a quick, cursory glance at everybody's. And even while kids are coming into the classroom, it really took a very limited amount of time. And I got different stamps, like 3 different colored stamps, and I would then stamp them as I saw them. So then when I would come back later, I would still give a more thorough notebook check later on, but I had almost all the pages either stamped with a varying color based off of how that was. And I would allow the students to also go back and fix any changes. So if they missed something or they got a red mark, they could come back and they could make a note there, and they could make the changes needed, like a redo of sorts. And then I would go back and check that again with a more thorough overview.
Okay. I did a similar thing with stamps. And sometimes I would just do my my signature, because they couldn't copy my signature. I knew what that looked like. Although I always waited to see if somebody would try. So somebody's calling in. We're going
Hello.
to have a guest here. Here we go. Our first guest on the show, Grant. Welcome. But yeah,
Hello.
So I would, maybe he's not there. There he is.
Can you hear me?
Grant. What's up, Grant?
Awesome.
Yeah, well, you have a grading philosophy. Do you have any tips for grading?
Are you guys teachers? Oh, sorry, no.
We are teachers. You a teacher?
Who's the screen
All right,
of this
move it in
call-in
now.
talk show?
Nice. So yeah, I had different stamps too. I went and we got crank called first time. That was nice.
Reminded me that we didn't introduce
So,
ourselves.
yeah.
Should we do that?
Good point.
Oh, we totally forgot. So why don't you go first?
My name
You're our
is
guest.
Danielle, and I am all around at Teach Nouvelle, teachnouvelle.com, except for TPT, where it's just Nouvelle. a problem to maybe address in the future. I don't know, social media consistency. And I teach 8th and 9th grade language arts in Puerto Rico. So that's where I am right now. Puerto Rico.
Awesome.
Awesome.
I
How do you
say
say
Puerto
it?
Rico.
Puerto or Porto?
Like that.
There you go. All right. I'm Jonathan Stevens. I'm not, well, I guess I am from Teacher Happy Hour, but I'm from Created for Learning, and me and my wife, Lisa. And I'm no longer in the classroom this year. This is my first year not in the classroom, but I taught 7th and 8th grade English and creative writing for the last 8 years. And then before that, I taught 7, 9, 11. I've taught basically 6th through 12th grade.
Rosa, I'm under the Students of History moniker because I taught history for like 11, 12 years. First in Florida, then in the Northern Virginia area. Now I coordinate our school-wide testing at my at a high school. I always taught high school. It was always 9 through 12. Still in the Northern Virginia area.
Cool. So sorry, I'll go back to my stamp. So I went and like made custom stamps. Like I made one that it said good practice. You mentioned practice earlier. I actually made one that said good practice, and I made one that said on time. And those were the two personalized ones I wanted, because I didn't want them to say like 100% or perfect or those ones. Like I wanted to communicate that language, like you said, that it was practice and that practice makes you better, right? But then practice also isn't the test. It's the practice, all right? So just do your best at the practice. And so I wanted to tell them good practice. So those were the two, and I would alternate them depending on whether I was just doing it as a timestamp. Like when I was grading essays, when they would bring in their next paragraph, I would go around at the beginning of class and just put on time right under the last word they'd written. So even if it was just 2 lines of a paragraph, so that part was on time, and anything they did after that I knew was late. And so that was the way I checked paragraphs.
Cool, I like
to see
that.
if they were on time. Or if I didn't have that one, I would do my signature.
Well, I mean, we're closing in here on 8 o'clock, and I know normally we try to make it a 7:30 to 8 o'clock show, so we're not overwhelming people or demanding too much of their time, since some people obviously are probably still bringing papers home. Thankfully, we're not. Are there any kind of I love these tips, especially about the rubric. That's for me, Danielle. It's definitely something I'm going to try to integrate. Are there any other tips that we really want to make sure we get out there before we say goodbye to everybody?
Well, we've been talking mostly about the big papers. I wonder if we can just share our thoughts about the little papers, the day-to-day papers. Those ones, how do you do those without them piling up so much? And how do you navigate which ones to grade and which ones not to grade, or do you grade them all? Or what are your thoughts on the day-to-day papers?
Okay, I actually have a rubric on everything, and my students will write it in a column themselves. So let me see if I can just do this right here. Maybe it'll be ideas and citation. Maybe it's let me see if this works. Ideas, citation. And they just write it right next to their paper. And maybe it's 1, 1, and 3 makes a nice 5 score. And they just draw it right on there, and I can just boom, 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 done. I can go through the whole stack while they're writing in their journal or something, right? So I use a rubric for everything. Although I guess that's technically not a rubric. That's just a score.
But I mean, that's what a rubric is, whether it's more detailed or whether it's simple. I mean, that's the key thing, is having something like that, especially, and getting students to understand that is, I mean, that's a huge skill for them going forward, because when they understand the concept of a rubric and, how to make work that meets the standards that they're working towards. I mean, in college, that's what they're going to be seeing, the rubrics. And the more you can experience in that at our level, the better off they're going to be later on.
I also think it's really valuable this is tough love here, but I think it's valuable to expose them to the fact that not everyone is going to spend half an hour understanding and reading and loving their paper. Like college professors or TAs, you know, they've got lives too. So if you can't impress me in a minute, like, you've lost your window. Not for everything. I'm just saying, like, I think there's room for some tough love in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. They're so, I always ask them how much they, like for essays, I ask them, well, how much would be the right number of minutes you would want me to spend on your essay? And just confronting them with that question, in their heads, you can tell they think like 15 minutes or 20. That's what they were thinking. But when they actually have to say it out loud, they don't feel right about saying that out loud. And they're like, 10. 10 is usually where they average out. They're like, 10. And then when you show the math on the board, well, that'd be 2,500 minutes. Then they go, okay, 3. They bring it down. They're reasonable. They've just never thought about it.
Well, I would think that most people
haven't
think
thought
about that, you know, that how much work that is for a teacher to grade that much. You know, that's one of the things in society that I think a lot of teachers, you know, think about is you know, their treatment society and how teachers are looked at. And because most people haven't done that math, you know, to understand how much time teachers need to put in on each one of their students, because it becomes overwhelming really quickly.
Really?
Yeah. So should we even care about the social, we got to wrap it up here soon, but should we even care about the social stigma? Like, yeah, so now that, like, let's say we all reach the super perfect land where we're not taking papers home, and then we tell people that aren't teachers, yeah, do you ever feel like they look at you like a lazy teacher? You're not doing your job right, or should we even care about that?
I think there's people that are going to be think that, because there's still people who are clock watchers at school too, who think that you need to be there for a certain amount of time based off or on teacher work days, whether you have that work done or not. And the people who are extremely efficient at their job, who do their job really well and know how to manage it, are, you know, in and out, and it's not a big deal for them. And I think those are the ones who get stigmatized sometimes, because you're efficient at your job and you're doing it well. You're not there like watching the clock. Okay, it's 3:15. I can go home. My contractual hours are up. And I don't know how you can change that stigma outside of just being good at your job and doing it well, and showing everyone that you know what you're doing and you're not concerned with that stigma.
I completely agree. And you're there for the students. And if they're learning and you can prove that they're learning and they know that they're learning, I think that that's the most important thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, especially if they're having a fun time doing it. So, you know, and I mean, there's nothing better than the students getting their work done and they're learning, you're getting your work done, and everybody's having fun, and everybody gets to go home and not work their butts off at home. Like, that's a perfect environment. And so I don't know why anybody would complain about that if that's really happening. But they kind of do.
I always tell them, I have a cat and Netflix, both of which are really cool. So I could take your paper home.
Well said.
Yeah. Well, thanks for everybody joining in tonight. If you have your red glass, because this is Teacher Happy Hour, let's go ahead and raise them to better teachers. How about that? Here we go. To being better selves.
All right, well, yeah, thank you, everybody, for joining in. Prank callers, too.
Thanks for joining.
Welcome aboard. That's a badge of honor. Now we got our first
And we were all respectful. We showed the love.
It's such an enticing topic, Abe. I'm surprised we didn't get more, the grading wards. All right.
Yep. Well, feel free to hang out and ask some more questions and talk. And but we'll be back in hopefully 2 weeks for another topic. Feel free to drop some topic ideas down there, or send them to us on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, and let us know your future topics you'd love us to talk about. And we'll look through those and start scheduling them out. as of right now, we don't have one for 2 weeks from now. So if you're following us on all our social media, you'll find out what the upcoming topics are. And if you share and get involved, you might get to pick the topic. Well, you definitely will. It may not be the next one,
Exactly.
but it'll be coming up. So,
All right.
all right.
Yep.
Bye, y'all.
As we like to say, keep on being
Yeah.
awesome, everyone.